There's a certain thrill in watching an entire sheet cake perform a slow-motion backflip off your deck, especially when it's not your party, not your cake, and definitely not your impeccably dressed host tumbling after it like a chandelier in a windstorm. That's exactly what went down one crisp October afternoon in 2024, when Laura, the self-crowned queen of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, decided my backyard deck in sunny Asheville, North Carolina, was her stage for a garden club gala. From my kitchen window, coffee steaming in my hand, I watched as my carefully engineered hydraulic supports tilted the deck just enough to send platters, bunting, and one very unauthorized podium sliding into chaos with a kind of poetic grace. The podium collapsed under Laura like a house of cards, and buttercream-soaked guests scattered like startled pigeons. No one was hurt, but Laura? She shrieked as if someone had set fire to her prized azaleas. That podium, apparently, was her holy grail. This all started 3 months earlier, when the HOA declared my deck, which overlooks the rolling hills of the Blue Ridge Parkway, a community scenic asset. Never mind that I'd built it myself, funded it with my own money, and secured every permit Asheville City Hall could stamp. Laura, armed with a clipboard, 2 lackeys, and a cloud of floral perfume, showed up at my door one humid July morning. She announced that my deck was now subject to HOA access scheduling due to its visual value. I blinked. She blinked back. I asked if she meant strangers could book my private property like an Airbnb rental. She said yes, with a smile that screamed control freak. I asked if she was joking. She said no, just community-minded. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a neighbor. I was facing a suburban dictator in a mint green blazer. At first, I brushed it off as hot air. I ignored the notices stuffed in my mailbox, the shared space rules taped to my door, and the sudden uptick in HOA meetings held at houses with a view of my property. But then I woke up one morning to find chalk lines scrawled across my deck, a measuring tape abandoned by my roses, and a flag staked in my flower bed labeled Event Zone 1. That's when I muttered, "Oh, you want to dance? I don't do passive-aggressive. I do calculated chaos. My day job? Designing modular disaster-proof flooring for military bases. Think platforms that can tilt 15 degrees and still hold a tank." So, I got to work under the deck, retrofitting the supports with silent hydraulic lifts. Legal, discreet, and tested with sandbags, crash dummies, and a cardboard cutout of Ryan Reynolds from a forgotten Halloween prank. The tilt was subtle enough to avoid lawsuits, dramatic enough to make a point. Laura, meanwhile, barreled ahead with her gala plans, never asking permission. She sent out invites for a community deck brunch and slid a note under my door demanding full access for her setup on October 12th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Her sister's bakery was providing the cake, and any interference, she wrote, would be hostile obstruction. I taped her note to my fridge. It was my morning motivation. On the day of the event, I left early, drove to a cafe downtown, and pulled up my security camera feed. Folding chairs, white tablecloths, pastel bunting fluttering in the breeze. Laura had turned my deck into a Pinterest board. She barked orders like a drill sergeant with a vendetta against fun. By noon, guests in sundresses and loafers arrived, and Laura stepped up to her podium, plugged into my backyard outlet with a neon yellow extension cord. As she launched into her speech about community unity, I triggered the first tilta gentle 2 degrees. Glasses wobbled. Plates shifted. Laura paused, frowned, and kept talking. I waited. When she raised a knife to cut the cake, proclaiming, "This is about shared spaces," I hit the full tilt. Chaos erupted. Chairs skidded. The cake launched, flipped, and splattered across Laura's designer heels. The podium buckled, and she went down, arms flailing, bunting wrapping her like a pastel straitjacket. Her mic screeched into a pitcher of iced tea. Someone yelled, "Is this a landslide?" My phone buzzed with HOA group chat panic and voicemails from board members. Laura's was the loudest, naturally. 20 minutes later, she stormed my porch, frosting still clinging to her shoes. She called me a saboteur, threatened lawsuits, demanded I explain the structural failure. I blinked innocently and said, "Laura, are you saying my deck couldn't handle your cake?" Her jaw clenched. I invited her in, showed her the permits, blueprints, and city certifications. I even offered her tea, which she refused like I'd laced it with arsenic. She didn't notice the living room camera still rolling. I suggested she report the unsafe deck to the city so we could both present our records and explain why she was hosting events on private property without consent. Her face turned a shade of rage red I'd never seen. She accused me of humiliating her in front of key stakeholders. I nodded and handed her a towel for her shoes. That night, the HOA's emergency meeting dissolved into shouting. Someone leaked the camera footage to the neighborhood's private Facebook group purely by accident, of course. Laura vanished for a week, but I knew she wasn't done. She was plotting. Anonymous complaints started arriving. My lawn was too rustic. My hose was an eyesore. My trash cans were exposed. All from a new community compliance committee email that didn't exist until the brunch fiasco. I traced it to Laura. Then came the big move. An HOA letter claiming my deck was under review for safety concerns and possible demolition. Classic Laura, thinking paper was power. What she didn't know was that I'd spent 15 years in legal logistics, designing structures for war zones and testifying in zoning disputes. My permit file was bulletproof. Instead of lawyering up, I requested to speak at the next HOA meeting. Laura tried to block me, but the bylaws printed and highlighted gave me 5 minutes. I used 4. Good evening, I said. My deck didn't fail. It performed as designed, a prototype for adaptive structures. All permits are filed, inspections passed. I've also issued a cease and desist for unauthorized use of my property. Any further attempts will be recorded and reported. I smiled. Oh, and I'm hosting a deck demo next weekend. Motion sensitive. You're all invited. Laura's face looked like she'd swallowed a wasp. The fallout was slow but delicious. Laura pivoted to charm, dropping off muffins and sticky notes about community spirit. Then a cop, Officer Ramirez, showed up, looking embarrassed. Got a call about a weaponized deck, he said. I showed him the hydraulics, permits, and safety features. He grinned, called it movie set genius, and closed the case. But Laura wasn't done. I learned she'd filed for an unpermitted gazebo in the community park. I sent a redacted letter to the HOA's insurer about liability risks, and she canceled it 3 days later. Her final gambit was a proposed community integration initiative to legalize commandeering private decks. At the vote, I stood up. If I build my own deck, pay my taxes, and follow every rule, why should the HOA control it? Vote yes, and your patio could be next. The initiative tanked. Laura's face was a storm cloud. I announced a deck demo for the next weekend, and the neighborhood showed up 12 strong, laughing, cheering, sipping lemonade as I tilted the deck like a carnival ride. Laura watched from her window, curtains twitching. When she marched over, I handed her my permit packet. She left without a word. The real victory came at the HOA election. I ran, not for power, but to stop Laura's reign. My campaign was simple: private property, public sanity. Laura's rants about structural anarchy fell flat. I won by a landslide. She resigned in a 3,000-word email, blaming everyone but herself. The neighborhood bloomed, fences got painted, sidewalks fixed, rules relaxed. But Laura wasn't gone. A drone started buzzing my yard, filming. I caught it with a net, copied the footage, just me watering plants, and sent it back with a note. Great views, huh? The drone vanished. Laura went quiet. For now. So what do you think? Was I wrong to tilt the deck, or was Laura asking for it? Should private property ever bend to community demands? And who's the real villain here, Laura, or the HOA system itself? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more neighborhood drama. You never know when the next cake might flip.